Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on October 26th. We are here to talk about the winter release for Flosum for 2023. So to get us started, we can talk about the introducing everyone who is going to be part of the call. We have on the call, we have myself, so Verola Mihailovic. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing here. We have Mayank Singh, who is a Technical Account Director, and as well as Don Bloomquist, who's the Director of Customer Success. So we're really excited to get the conversation started with you. Throughout the presentation, you'll be able to ask Q&A questions, which we will be doing our best to answer as they come in. We will be also having some polls, so please partake as we show you the new features, functions, and capabilities. And as well, I'd like to show everyone that we have a collaboration page on our customer success portal. So on the portal itself, you can feel free to ask any questions that you have related to this webinar or this release. Or any other questions that you might have, especially if you are looking for text or information that you can reference to later. As well, we will be using our collaboration portal to ask some poll questions and get your feedback on the future direction or any product features that you are looking for. So getting started with our new release, we have a very exciting agenda for you here today. We are going to be launching this release on November 5th, and we will be rolling that out. And we have some headline features that we would really love to show everyone and talk to everyone about. So we have intelligent DevOps with market-leading demerge functionality, which has been a major request, and it's completely unique to the market, having the ability to save tons of time for release managers and developers. We have some automated DevOps QA functionality coming up. We have hardened domain management, as well as improving the extensibility and different capabilities of our data backup and recovery solution. We are excited to share with you, for a part of our Trust Center, what the new Flosum DevSecOps platform is. We'll have a live demo, and then we'll be circling back and doing a Q&A and talking about some questions that have come in or the general trends of questions that folks have been asking about. So we're going to get started here and talk about our headline features. So coming in as part of our intelligent DevOps, we now have the ability to do a branch demerge. So with this release, it's a market-first capability where we can, with a single click, take out a feature branch, and this helps developers and admins to simplify the process of rolling back and undoing changes. So how often have you been in a change point or an issue where you need to get a release out, but 2 or 3 of the major branches have to be taken out to do this launch effectively? This traditionally requires many hours of rework, and on top of that, urgent rework to deal with the changes, often dealing with complex teams. So with this feature, we now give the capability back in your hands to be able to undo some branches and avoid manual rework to make the release process even easier than before. With our next feature, as part of this release, is we have the ability to do multi-branch merge. So this improves the velocity of deployment and the ease of use for both developers and release managers, which allows the multiple branches to be merged together and allowing it to have multiple tests or multiple conditions be met as it is being pushed into production, which makes it a lot easier to use and was one of our most requested features as part of this release. Then going on into our automated DevOps QA features. So some of these have been really requested to improve the quality before moving into production. That will generally improve the rate of success of deployments. So we have the ability to do custom validation before merging, which allows you to implement custom quality gates before merging to remove any nagging merge issues that are unique to your environment. This will successfully reduce bugs while merging and help push things into production. We also have the ability to do code coverage check earlier in the development lifecycle, which will help catch issues before moving into production. And this will improve the success rates and reduce bugs. As part of our new feature set, we have hardened domain management, which is really important for enterprise-wide environments where folks are dealing with complex environments or system integrators with multiple customers. This means that multiple domains can be established and teams can be segregated while remaining subject to appropriate domain configurations and policies that improve productivity and apply appropriate security posture for different teams. And this is really important, especially if you have an enterprise where you have different teams working on different functionalities who have different release cadences. In particular, some of the questions that we've received about this is potentially if you have offshore or you have outsourced certain development processes within your organizations, how can you set up an appropriate domain that gives the right governance around the release process? So with this, we have the ability to really granularly manage the domain requirements to allow folks to be able to have the right security posture with the release process. And this is now going to be available for either multi-Git or multi-TFS integrations. Now coming into our first poll, if we don't mind getting that up. So we would really love to know, what current processes do you use to keep your development sandboxes in sync with production? As part of our key features, now we have the ability to do pipeline scheduling, which was a feature that was really requested, as well as the ability to scale up massively and have multiple concurrent pipeline executions happening. Other key features, we are happy to announce that we have a Viva Vault integration, which helps life sciences customers adopt proven DevOps tools, templates, and the best practices that Flosum can provide. We also have new ease of use features, including improvements to override protection, agile accelerator configurable fields, as well as merge editor and performance improvements. As part of our additional capabilities, so we mentioned the pipeline scheduling, as well as massive scaling, we have a new integration with Excel IQ. Now, giving the results of our poll, what we can see here is the process that most often is used is refreshing ad hoc sandboxes, and then regularly schedule sandbox requests. And as well, we sometimes use the Flosum backsync pipeline to refresh your sandbox. So with our next improvements as part of this, as part of the Winter 23 release, we have another poll available here. So as many of you know, we have data backup and recovery as another flagship product of ours. And what we've been doing over the last year is really working on increasing the scalability and the security features available as part of the platform. So really focusing on being able to guard your Salesforce instance on the towards any issues that might be caused by human error, ransomware, or malicious intent, or some issues where there's integration or bad code, being able to back up your information. So we have new features that help handle the scalability required, including the ability to throttle API calls during backup to improve performance, being able to compress and encrypt these backups as they're happening, as well as integrations into protocols such as OpenID and additional retention policies that can support the scaling and meeting the compliance needs of the business. If we can throw up the poll here, if we, as we go through, if you can tell us what you're looking at in the future, if the data backup and recovery is something that is really needed as part of the solution. We have extensibility with our product, as well as the ability to work within our platform. So it's really exciting for us to be able to have more scalability and security features, as well as being able to provide this critical capability to our customers. That's perfect. We'll share the results here. So it seems that folks are looking at solutions and really interested in being able to help manage some data or the data backup and really figure out how to reduce risk and improve the compliance aspect of their organizations. What I would like to do now is introduce everyone to the Flosum DevSecOps platform. So this is really interesting to us, and we're really looking forward to sharing this with everyone. Is part of the challenges that are happening in DevOps right now is the cybersecurity challenge. And I think everyone has been hearing the words ransomware. Everyone's been hearing about, hey, data loss or potentially hacked. And really wanted to elaborate with everyone here and our customers about the business challenge and the cybersecurity challenge that's present with DevOps. And what's happening is that I think everyone is very aware that it is a journey. And as DevOps gets launched, it's not necessarily a product, it's an ideology. And having more and more folks start to use the DevOps process, if security is not automated, what ends up happening is there is the potential of the cybersecurity posture to change over time. As you add third-party tools, different webhooks, APIs, authentication methods, the attack surface expands. And typically what we have seen, or at least what the news is telling us, is that there is now usually a major event that happens that makes organizations really evaluate their DevOps challenge. Whether this is a breach, which is really unfortunate, or something that is caused by an audit or compliance requirement. This is where folks start to look for DevSecOps tools that automates and incorporates security as part of the DevOps challenge. Really looking at what outcomes need to be delivered with DevSecOps challenges is it really needs to have the ability to accelerate innovation and scale, enhancing the value of DevOps, improving security posture and compliance, and offering data autonomy and being able to back up your information and avoid issues related to these major events and keep functioning and keep business critical processes going. With Flosum, we have a DevSecOps platform with Trust Center that can help with your cybersecurity posture, integrate it into the DevOps process. We have the capabilities of managing your data with backup and recovery, helping seed your sandboxes, the ability to move data and manage it appropriately due to the compliance and governance, as well as helping with your DevOps process. So what we're looking for with the DevSecOps outcomes is really giving a platform that can enable these outcomes for your organization. If we can transition now, we would love to show you a demonstration of our capabilities and new functions and features. Over to Mike.
Great, thank you, Vero. That was a wonderful introduction to all our new features and the Trust Center. And I am really excited to bring the latest features in our Winter 23 release for all of you. Thanks for giving us your time today. And let's jump into our first feature without further delay. So we will start off with the multi-branch merge. As all of you who are maybe following the agile processes, you might have a bunch of feature branches, user story branches, which maybe after QA need to get merged into a single release or sprint branch. And until now, you would literally do it one by one. You will go to your first user story branch, merge it into your release branch, go to your second one, do that merge. Now, with the multi-branch merge, all you have to do is, let us say this is my target branch. So I go to my target branch, I click on my Smart Merge button. It opens up the standard merge branches screen that all of you are familiar with. But now I see a new checkbox here, merge from multiple branches. And when I do that, it gives me the ability to add multiple branches. So let's just assume that this is some sort of an April release that I am merging. So I can just select all my April release user story branches, add them here. And when I click on my check conflicts button, I pretty much get all my conflicts, whether the components are new. You will notice a few new statuses like conflict new or merge not started, etc. Because this is a multi-branch merge, it's not necessary that it is a one-to-one conflict only. You could have multiple branches that have conflicts with each other. So this particular screen is showing you all the components, their statuses, etc. And as you can imagine, if let's say even if you had 10 user story branches that you were merging into a sprint, and if let's say you had no conflicts, then you just did whatever you needed to do in 1/10 the time that it would have taken you earlier. And even with some of these conflicts, etc., it'll still be a huge time saver. Some of these new statuses that you see, for example, conflict new, what that implies is that, yes, the component we are putting into the target branch does not exist in the target branch, but we still have conflicts between the multiple source branches that we are trying to merge. And the merge not started is just, yeah, it does exist in the target. And you also have conflicts with the source branches. Could be a single source branch, could be multiple source branches that it has conflicts with. But overall, once you go into any of these screens, it's your standard two-pane conflict view, which you just cycle through every branch. So not much of a change there. You all know that one. But in general, this feature, as you are doing your release merges, etc., will save you a ton of time. And then moving on from the multi-branch merge, let's go into the demerge functionality. And Flosum just takes the whole demerge paradigm to a whole new level. Even with a git revert, you can only, for those of you familiar with git, you can only do it with the latest changes or with a particular branch. Here, what we are allowing you to do is that it doesn't matter when you merged a particular branch into, let's say, the target branch which you want to demerge it from. You will be able to demerge it cleanly, efficiently, in a quick manner. So if you come into a branch now, you will see a merges tab here, and all the merges that have been done into this particular branch are listed here. You can select whichever merge you want to demerge and click on this particular demerge button. And you end up with the screen, which again will be very familiar with you. It's very similar to a branch merge screen, except that this time now we are talking about demerge instead of merging. So you could have components that can just be safely demerged without a need to do anything on your part. These components will be, let's say, components which have not been added by any other branch into this common branch, or they are components that that maybe are just the last version or the latest version of the component. Then they can easily be removed, and the previous version just becomes the demerged version. However, what about, let's say, if you have a component, to take an example, let us say you have a component that has 8 versions in your target branch, and the one you are trying to demerge is maybe version number 3. So you have 2 versions prior to it and another 4-5 versions after it. So how do we go about doing that? So those are the kind of components that will end up in this conflict section. You will click on the conflict link for that particular component. And again, you will come to the 2-pane branch screen, the conflict screen that all of you are very familiar with, so this screen for demerge is going to be very similar, but not exactly the same as what you are used to. So again, the version that you're trying to demerge is in the left panel. This is, as we all know, the panel that we work with. And if I look at this example, I can see that compared to my previous version, in the version that I'm trying to demerge, I had added a new line. So since this is the version that I'm trying to demerge, I want to take out, I don't want this new line. So I'm just going to get rid of this new line. And then I'm going to save it. And what it's going to pop up next for me is that saved version from the left panel where I had removed the line and the last version of that component in the branch. And in that last version, I can see that the next versions that came, maybe they added a bunch of other lines, etc., which I do want to keep because they were added by previous versions. So I'm just going to add them. And when I save it now, I have removed the lines that belong to the version I want to demerge while keeping the rest of the lines here. And as we can see, we here maybe have only one last version, but if you had any versions in between, let's say number 3 and the last version was maybe a number 8, all of them will be available in this dropdown for you, even though by default, it will go to version number 8, let's say if that was the last version, but you could compare it against any version you wanted to. And once I, let's say, hit the save button here, it will change the status to ready to demerge. I can select the components that are ready to demerge. Of course, I would go through all the other ones also before I would actually do it, and hit the demerge button, and that will remove all the artifacts of that particular merge from my combined branch that I have. Could be a sprint or release branch. So definitely a very powerful feature that should save you a lot of time, and probably some of you will see some process changes happening in your processes as well. Coming on to our next feature, hardened domains. So as we can see here, the way you set up domains is you enable it from the settings tab. And you just click on that enabled button, save it, it'll take care of things for you. You can define multiple domains here. And as we can see, I have all these domains there. I can create a new domain right from here. And I can assign users to these domains. So I can assign various repositories to these domains and various orgs that belong to these domains. So anytime, let's say you have different business units and you want that separation, maybe due to compliance reasons or just for ease of use, where if developers are only focused on one particular business unit, why should they see the clutter for the rest of the business units in there, right? So, or maybe if you have any vendors that are part of your organization, but you want to limit them to a certain set of orgs and repos, etc., then that would be another use case where this would really come in handy. So you can define whatever domains make sense in your particular organization structure, give the users access. And the great thing here is that, let us say you have a release manager who maybe needs access to 2 or 3 of the domains that you have. Maybe you have 10 domains that you define, and this particular person needs access to 2 or 3 of them. Just add them to those 2 or 3 domains. and they will have access to those 2 or 3 domains only, but not the others. Similarly, if we have a super admin who needs access to everything, then yeah, they can be part of every domain and they'll see everything, right? So it's totally flexible the way you can define it. You have the repositories where you can define which repository people have access to, the orgs you can define, and the pipelines automatically appear here depending on the orgs that are being referenced in the pipeline. So you don't really need to do any definition here. So for example, if we take a look at, let's say these are multiple domains, I am a system admin here. So if I look at this org, which is my FL demo org, I have probably hundreds of branches here. However, if I, let's say, switch my browser and I'm logged in as this particular individual in the same org, I see only these 25 branches that are relevant for this particular individual and whatever domain they have been given access to. This person is not going to see the rest of the branches, repositories, orgs, any of those things that they don't have access to. Right? So just makes for a much more simplified and easier clutter-free experience for your developers. And of course, from a security standpoint, also people are only seeing what they need to see and nothing else. So again, something to definitely look at and take a look at it. Moving on, let's talk about the branch merge validation. So some of you might be familiar with the custom validation that we have before deployments. Anytime you're doing a deployment, you can define a custom validation, whatever logic you want to, before you do it. We have introduced the same feature for branch merges. So anytime you are doing a branch merge, you can pretty much write whatever logic you want to. Maybe your branches are associated with Jira stories and you want to go to Jira and check the status of a branch before you allowed it to be merged into, or your branches, let's say, are integrated with some sort of static code analysis tool, and you don't want it to be merged forward until all the errors that the static code analysis tool has given you for that branch are resolved. So could be any logic that you want to implement. You could pretty much use it as a quality gate to make sure that your branches are in compliance before they can be moved forward, either into, let's say, a release branch or anywhere else. So for this particular example, what I did was I just created a custom field in Flosum, and I called it stage. I gave it some options, and one of those options is a ready to deploy. And my logic is that if my branch, the April 18 CI test branch here, is ready to deploy, then nobody can merge into it. Nobody should be able to merge into it. It is now ready for deployment, no more changes, right? So as we can see now, I actually took my April 17 CI test branch, tried to merge it into my April 18 CI test branch, and it did not allow me to go through. It said that, no, the target branch is in a ready to deploy stage, and you're not allowed to move forward, right? So similarly, as I said, you can build your own logic. It's totally customizable. It's totally in your hands, very powerful on whatever you want to do as your logic that you can then use to define your quality gates, etc., before we move forward. Moving on from the quality gates, you now have the ability to schedule pipelines. So let us say you have a branch and maybe your org is quite busy. So every time your branch is changed by your developers, you don't want to do a deployment into whatever orgs that pipeline associated pipeline references. On the other hand, you don't want to do it manually every night or every week, whatever way either. So you can just come here. You can define a pipeline for the branch. You can set up a frequency. It could be a once only kind of thing. Let's say if you were planning to run a pipeline to do some production deployments along with some backsync org deployments over the weekend, you can just set it up once and go ahead and do it. Or as we just discussed, that let's say every day or every week, you want to just make sure that everything in the branch gets processed by the pipeline. You can pretty much set up whatever frequency you want to for the use cases that you have. And you can do your process through the pipeline, whether validations, deployments to other orgs, etc., calls to other systems using webhooks. All of it can be done on schedule now, instead of having to do it manually from a pipelines perspective. And then one of the most popular features in Flosum gets some enhancements: override protection, or what some of you might still fondly remember as impact analysis. So in our previous versions, you did not have the ability to do a selective override protection on a branch. Even if, let's say, you had a branch, you wanted to deploy only some of the components from that branch into a particular org, if you did override protection, you did it on the entire branch. And if it happened to be a large branch and you wanted to only do a very small subset of it, it would take a substantial amount of time for the retrieval of all those components from the org and then the comparison and everything. So here with the specified components checkbox now, you can pretty much select the components that you want to do the override protection on instead of doing it on all the components. And you can save yourself a ton of time by doing that. So definitely a huge time saver. But not only that, as we know, you're familiar with the screen. When you do override protection, you get all these components that might be different. And when, let's say, you would start going through them, you would click on that. It will open up, let's say, this particular screen. And you will do whatever merges, etc., you wanted to do here. You would click on save. You'll go back to that list, click on the next one. So that is something you don't need to do any longer. You do have now the save and next button here, and this will automatically open the next component in the list for you, instead of every time having to click on the next component. So that definitely should save you quite a bit of time as well, as you cycle through all the components that you want to do your override protection on. And one of the other major integrations that we are introducing with this particular release is with AxleQ. So AxleQ is a testing tool that allows you to run automated tests that you would have defined in AxleQ. From a branch in Flosum now, you can directly call any test suites that you might have defined in AxleQ. And as we can see here, you get the results back in Flosum in that same branch also. We have a tab here for AxleQ results, and you can pretty much see that whatever the results are, in this case, for my first or latest result, I ran 13 tests, 12 of them passed, 1 of them failed. If I go on into the details of it, again, right within Flosum, I can see all the tests that were run, the details of them. I can see whether they succeeded or failed. And if they failed, what was the reason that they failed. So something that is seamlessly available for you as an integration with one of our partners. That's AxleQ integration. And now, moving on to, we looked at all the latest and greatest new features with Flosum with domains. We introduced a certain level of security and compliance needs we met there. But now we are introducing the Trust Center, which is like Flosum, 100% native Salesforce application that sits on your Flosum org and allows you to monitor and prevent any security violations in your Salesforce environment. So for example, if I look at, let's say, this particular chart, I could see the red is modify all data. And Trust Center is monitoring for me that, hey, you used to have like 3 people with modify all data access on the 12th, and that jumped to 21 people on the 15th with modify all data. So that's a huge red flag for beyond something went wrong. That is not the kind of access that I want to be giving to 25% of my organization or whatever it is. So it is this kind of scanning, monitoring that it is doing on a continuous basis, showing you the data points that are relevant to you and allowing you to take the corrective measures to ensure that your security policies, postures are not in violation, plus allowing you to track also. So going into, let's say, the settings tab within Trust Center, you can define your security policies and posture. For example, here I'm just saying that if the password length is going to be less than 12, it's a problem. Or if the login attempts are going to be more than 5, that violates my security policies, right? So similarly, at the org level, user level, profile level, permission sets level, I can define all sorts of different security policies. For example, a certain object should not have modify all access, and for different profiles that can be associated. Right? So all these sort of policies can be defined within Trust Center. And then as we saw, the violations can be shown here. We can see, for example, all the different places where people are logging into this particular org. And if some of them maybe don't make sense, then I have a very quick bird's eye view of saying that why are these happening from these particular locations. So just these kind of tracking which you would not have available by default in Salesforce, or it will take you a long time to figure out maybe who are all the people who have modify all access. You can see with a simple click in the Trust Center, right? It also allows you to track the kind of components that are being changed in your org on a continuous basis. It allows you to see who are the people who are making these changes, how many of these changes are being made by these people. In the audit trails, etc., you can define what kind of changes are high risk versus low risk versus warnings, etc., and keep track of all those. With the remediations tab, you will be able to give access to your developers or assign any of these issues that are popping up to your developers so they can go ahead and fix those issues. Right. So a lot of this is being done by scanning your orgs and seeing what the changes are. But because Trust Center is tightly integrated with Flosum itself, you will also find that it it prevents security violations from happening. Right? So let us say you have a branch in which you are about to deploy some profiles or some org level settings to a particular org. So you can, before even you do the deployment, Flosum will be able to do that sort of an analysis and show you all the components within this branch which might be in violation for the policies you have defined. For example, you have said that profile ABC should not have modify all access for this particular object. And now suddenly in this branch, we find that profile ABC does have modify all access for this particular object. So we will catch it, we will warn you even before you do that deployment, right? So preventative measures as well as scanning and informing you in case changes have been made from outside of Flosum. Trust Center does allow you to define that particular security posture and ensure that you maintain it and are in compliance. Now, another big leg of your security posture will be your data. Is your data actually safe, both from maybe malicious intent or accidental issues that might happen in your Salesforce org? And that is where Flosum's backup and recovery tool comes into play. So here, as we can see, you can connect as many orgs as you want to with Flosum's backup and recovery tool and be backing them up. It will show you the disk usage, where it's being backed up, data volumes, every backup, whatever is happening. You can track, you can restore any backup. All these are features that have been there. And with our latest release, we are adding the ability to define retention policies as well as any API quotas, etc., on the Salesforce side that you want to control. Now they are in your hands. So, for example, while doing the backup, if we realize that we have hit 60% of your bulk API call limits, then we'll switch over to other mechanisms, or we'll stop until the API limits reset and then begin the backup from there. Similarly, any retention policies and any other things that you want to archival, etc., that you want to define, all that can be defined within the data backup and recovery tool, and you can utilize it to meet your compliance needs, as well as just that peace of mind that you have all your data, which is pretty much recoverable in a single click. With that, I would conclude my demo and pass it back to V.
Okay, wonderful. So I'd like to throw up our third poll that we have. So just thank you so much for the wonderful demonstration. What I'd like to remind everyone, so this is the first time that we're demonstrating our platform where we have the ability to manage policy as codes. You saw how to visually set up the policy, how we're actively monitoring the threats available, being able to remediate some of these issues, as well as providing audited compliance and the ability to manage your data. So it's very unique, and would love to get you started if you have any questions. So if you have any questions about the release, please start throwing in the questions into the chat. We also have the ability for everyone, just as mentioned before, to go into our collaboration portal. And on our collaboration portal, we've got you started. We have 3 polls here on understanding from your perspective of how do you report the success of your Flosum solution to your business. We have a poll about what are your most frequently used and loved features. And we have a poll about the top 3 metrics that you use to measure success in the space of DevOps. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns about the release, feel free to put them in there. We will be following them up. We'll provide you a link to the collaboration portal after the presentation as well, and we'll share a recording of the webinar afterwards. So I'm going to end the poll here and talk about what are the most important areas for your organization today for DevSecOps. So really focusing on the code quality and security as part of Trust Center and our capabilities. We have code scanning and the ability to put quality and checking security into the code. Having defined access controls and governance. With Mike's demonstration there, you saw how you can really bring to light the current controls and the current situation around the access controls and governance. And then defining security policies and threat monitoring are also important for everyone to keep in mind. So going on into the release plan, what we're planning on doing. So as mentioned, the product launch will be November 5th. We will be sharing a document with you that you can share to other folks about what's new and some of our topics. We have blog posts that you can share. We'll have a press release, and we'll share this customer webinar with you afterwards. And then one thing that I wanted to mention to everyone to keep a lookout for is we'll have a Changing the Game webinar series where we'll have interesting topics. We have Peter Coffey from Salesforce talking about future security trends. We have Forrester Research partnering with us to talk about the DevOps to DevSecOps evolution and getting an industry perspective on how different tools and functionalities in different areas are currently addressing the security concerns around DevOps. And then we will have Brian Solis, which is a global innovation evangelist at Salesforce, talking about the role that developers would face in the novel economy and looking forward into the future. So right now, what I'd like to do is maybe circle back to some of the questions that we released and encourage everyone to go onto our collaboration website if you have any questions that you'd like answered, or refer back to text. But I'd like to hand it over to Don, maybe to tackle one or two of the questions that we received during the presentation today.
Yeah, thanks, Dee. Now, I'll just recap a couple of the key questions we've heard in the Q&A or on the side from today's webinar. Questions that hopefully everybody gets some benefit from here. I'll reiterate what Dee just mentioned. For any follow-up questions from here, we really want to kind of help and direct you to that collaboration site on the Flosum Success Portal. The URL for that site has been pasted into the chat window, so I would encourage everyone to take a copy of that URL, and we really want to try and make this collaboration site a really active participation forum with our customers, with you and Flosum. So in terms of two or three of the questions that did come up today that I want to touch quickly on, there was one comment around during the demo, we really want to learn more about some of the specifics and some of the conflicts and how to address those that came up. For that, I would really encourage you to reach out to your customer success manager. We'd be more than happy to have an individualized run through of that feature, of those questions you have on those conflicts, and some best practices around those and how they will fit into your process. So I'd like to kind of encourage that and as a follow-up to this activity. The second question I do want to call up and bring out today was a question around, are there any limitations around the demerge capability? Demerge being, I think a really exciting feature for us here, I think really unique on the market. And while we don't really see any specific limitations, there is one piece we will feed back to you. Only one feature, only one branch can be demerged at a time. And this is kind of designed as such so that we limit or don't have any user errors in this demerge, because it is really important that that demerge works successfully every time. So while there aren't any real limitations, the one I think key functional aspect of it is you can demerge one feature branch or one branch at a time. Okay, and finally, question number 3. We do have a question around the custom validation before a merge, so that logic that you can apply to determine if a branch is allowed to be merged or not. Do we have an example of that? How would you implement that? And we do have an example of that on our success portal. So I would highly encourage you to look up that example on the success portal. If you type in merge process approval, that article will show up in the search, and you will be able to see an example of both a custom validation rule and a custom trigger, and how you would apply that for the scenario that Mike walked through today. And so with that, V, I think those are kind of the three questions I had pulled out immediately today. The general question that came out that wasn't specific was around data backup and recovery and around the Trust Center solutions. They are separate products, separately licensed solutions. And if anything in those caught your attention today, if you have interest in those, please connect with your customer success manager. We'd be more than happy to arrange that discussion with you, bring in, understand kind of what your business objectives are, how those solutions work, and how those new solutions fit into your landscape. So please connect with your customer success manager. We'll be happy to talk through that with you. So with that, V, I'll pass the closing remarks back to you.
Thank you everyone for joining us on our webinar. So remember, as you go through this recording, go through any of our release content, release notes, feel free to ask questions on the collaboration portal. We will be looking out for it and answering your questions there. We have 3 questions and polls associated with that as well. We're going to be answering any questions that you sent in during the conversation today. So just a quick reminder, we will have blog posts, we will have a content from the release notes sent to you, and a recording to be shared with your team from our presentation today. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, please go to our collaboration portal, and we will make sure to answer any following up questions that you might have there. Thank you very much.